For all you budget-minded photographers out there, I did a bunch of research and found all of the interchangeable lens mirrorless cameras that you can buy today for $100 or less. So here they are. Let's start with Olympus. I actually still own one of these, so I can talk about them in a little bit more detail. Olympus has a number of models you can buy for $100 or less. These are the EP1, EP2, E-PL1, and E-PL2, and then finally the E-PM1. And I know all the model names sound similar, and that's because they're very similar cameras. All of these use the same 12 megapixel micro four thirds sensor, and of course they're all the micro four thirds mount. They all have fixed LCD screens, so unfortunately no tilting or flipping for different angles on these cameras. There are some small differences between each model, like the newer ones, like the E-PM1, support 1080p video, while the older ones are still 720p. The frames per second are higher on the newer models, but other than small differences, they are all very similar models, and whichever one you can find the best deal on would be very fun to shoot on. By the way, to make this easier on you, I'm putting all the cameras you're going to see today in this video listed in the description, so you can just go through, copy and paste, and search wherever you want to buy them. Also in the description, I have affiliate links to the places that I use to shop for camera gear. So if you are a little intimidated by eBay and peer-to-peer sites, which I use and love, but I get it, they can be intimidating, then I have other places I like to shop as well that offer free returns and warranties. So check those out as well. There should be cameras for everyone under $100, which is awesome. So out of these Olympus cameras, I think they're all really fun. I've owned a couple of them. Right now I own the Olympus E-PL2, which I bought for $100 and converted to infrared, and it's awesome. Also, micro four thirds lenses are great and affordable. And like all these cameras we're going to talk about today, because they're mirrorless and have that shorter distance between the lens mount and the sensor, you can buy these cheap adapters to adapt just about every vintage lens you can imagine on it, which is a ton of fun. Highly recommend that. Okay, next camera company we have is Sony. Now, Sony mirrorless cameras are a little bit more expensive on the used market today, but for that price, you get it upgraded, larger APS-C size sensors than the Olympus, some higher megapixel counts, some different body designs, so it could be worth it. And you get into the Sony E-mount system, which also has some great picks and affordable options. For $100, you have the Sony NEX-3, which is a 14 megapixel APS-C size sensor for the Sony E-mount. It does have a tilty screen, which is awesome, but it only shoots 720 video if you care about video. Still, you should be able to get great quality photos from this camera. And right now, that's the only Sony model I can consistently find for under $100. But an honorable mention goes to the Sony NEX-C3 and the Sony NEX-F3, which use an upgraded 16 megapixel sensor and are just a tad more at around $125 usually. So maybe look for a deal on those or just pay a little bit more to get them. And that is it for Sony right now, but keep an eye out for deals because they do dip below occasionally. And also these should be going down in price over the years. Okay, next up is Panasonic. And Panasonic is known for some really nice hybrid camera options today, but some of their older models can be found for $100 or less. And right now that's the Panasonic G1, the G10, the GF1, and the GH1. The GF1 is very similar to the Olympus cameras we saw earlier, and that is, it is extra compact, it has a fixed LCD screen, the same 12 megapixel micro four thirds sensor, and no electronic viewfinder. The G1 came out the same year, but earlier than the GF1, and it also uses the same 12 megapixel sensor, but it has a larger body and a fully articulating screen and an electronic viewfinder. The G10 is sort of a cross between the GF1 and G1. It has an EVF, but also has that fixed LCD screen. And the best of these, in my opinion, is the GH1, which has a fully articulating screen and an EVF, but also upgraded 1080p video and microphone ports, making it more video-centric, but also just as good for photographs. If you can grab a GH1 for $100, I think that's worth it. Honorable mentions go to the second generations of these cameras, like the G2, the GF2, which are hovering just above the $100 mark, but might be worth the upgrade or may come down in price soon, so maybe look at those as well. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. One of my goals for 2025 is to design and build my own unique digital camera from scratch for under $100, and I'm using Skillshare classes to help me bring that dream to a reality. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts across photography, film, design, even social media content creation if you want to make a photography YouTube channel like mine. Skillshare can help you take your career, skills, hobbies, or passions to the next level. I've identified several skills I need to learn in order to achieve my dream of building my own unique camera. And the big one holding me back right now is my 3D modeling skills, or lack thereof if you've checked out my previous projects. Skillshare has made starting this process really accessible. I search for the classes I'm interested in, add them to my custom list, and I'm off to the races. Like with this class, which is teaching me modeling in Blender. Just for fun, I also took the film photography class by Kyle McDougall, whose latest book I own, and I really respect his photography. He's also another YouTuber, and I learned a ton in this class. If you're also interested in taking your skills to the next level in 2025 in whatever area it may be, then sign up for Skillshare today. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Next up is Canon. This is an easy one. There are no Canon interchangeable lens mirrorless cameras under $100 right now, unfortunately. The closest thing we have is the Canon EOS M, the original one, and that is around $200. So moving on. Now we kind of have a weird one. This is Pentax. Now Pentax has made very few interchangeable lens mirrorless cameras over the course of their camera history. They are focusing on DSLRs and have only doubled down on those recently, unlike every other company. But they do have the infamous Pentax Q series of cameras. Now, at the time of recording this, even the cheapest original Pentax Q is hovering just above $100, but this changes a lot. Over the years, I've seen this go up and down. I've seen this model and the Q10 dip below $100 regularly over the years, so it's worth checking them out if this interests you. These are super tiny cameras, even smaller than the tiny Olympus bodies. They use the Pentax Q mount, which only has a few autofocus lenses available, but you can, of course, adapt anything to this camera, like all these mirrorless cameras. I like adapting small and cheap C or D mount lenses to this camera. Now, some of these aren't the best optically, but it is a whole lot of fun. One thing to note about adapting, though, any lens to this camera is that the sensor is significantly smaller than the other cameras that we've looked at so far. So any lens you adapt to it is going to be significantly cropped to a tighter field of view, more zoomed in, if you will. But that also means that some of these smaller sensors will cover the entire frame, which they would not on larger sensors. So you get to tap into some fun small lenses. If you can find one of these for $100, heck, even more, they're super fun. Maybe not as practical as some of the other options we've talked about, just from a lens availability perspective, but still good cameras. And then there's Nikon. Now, like Canon, Nikon's new mirrorless mount is just too new, so the oldest cameras are still too expensive. But unlike Canon, Nikon made a smaller system like the Pentax Q. This is the Nikon 1 system of cameras, and there are several for $100 or less. These are the Nikon 1 J1, J2, J3, and the Nikon 1 S1. These are all compact cameras with fixed screens, no EVFs, 1080p video, and 1-inch size sensors using the Nikon 1 mount. There's not a lot of lenses available for this mount, but there are a few. And of course, you can also manually mount vintage lenses to them, and that's what a lot of people do nowadays. These are all 10 megapixels with the J3 being an upgraded 14 megapixel sensor. Otherwise, they're all very similar. Honorable mentions go out to the Nikon 1 V1 and other Nikon 1 bodies that aren't a whole lot more expensive than $100, but offer things like built-in EVFs. So if you're really into this system and have a little bit more budget, those are worth checking out too. And then here's a manufacturer that you may not have thought about, and that's Samsung. Now, Samsung made mirrorless cameras with their own Samsung NX mount. And the cheapest cameras in that system right now are the Samsung NX-10 and the NX-100. These are both a bit above the $100 mark, but I thought it was worth throwing them out here as an honorable mention, and a camera system that not a lot of people are focusing on and most people forgot existed. So I think you can find a good deal if you keep an eye on these. These are higher megapixels than some of the other ones mentioned here, APS-C size sensors, and the Samsung mirrorless cameras that I've used have all been really nice actually. Personally, out of all these cameras, my recommendation would be the Sony, Panasonic, or Olympus cameras. These, I think, just represent the best bang for your buck, both the cameras themselves, but also the lens systems that they get you into, and the best for the average photographer, beginner getting started, taking great photos on a budget. If you want to see even more $100 options and want to go the DSLR route, then check out this video here for all the DSLRs I could find today for $100 or less. I'll see you over there, and until next time, happy snapping.